2023 was kind of a standout year for my personal gaming pleasure. Don't worry, you didn't click on the wrong video, I'm just setting the stage a little bit here. Anyway, 2023 was great for me. I played a frankly absurd amount of games considering what I'm typically able to accomplish amidst my other YouTube and related projects, and that made for a top 10 that I was actually quite happy with. As an aside, it was also one of the first and only times I could ever construct a top 10 games list. I typically don't get to play that many games as a result of the time I spend doing other things. This year was nearly as good, but not quite there. There weren't quite enough for a top 10, as I only got through 9 games for the first time in 2024, making up the entirety of the ranked list. Since I didn't quite hit 10 new games, new for me anyway, I'm ranking all of the games that I played rather than choosing an arbitrary number 2 favorite like a top 5 or 7 or something. But before we jump into those 9 video games, I'm going to feature a brief honorable mention section. These will be for more games that I played over the year but have already played and completed at some point in the past. This means I will discuss 13 games today, 4 that I replayed, and 9 which I played for the first time, whether new or not. Just bear in mind that I'm ranking the games played, honorable mentions and regular list respective of each other, not necessarily from worst to best, but from my personal least favorite to favorite. As always, this is just a random guy's opinion on the internet, so you are free to disagree with me below. Carrion was a game I played several years ago when it was still relatively new on Steam, if I'm not mistaken. At the time, I played through the game, got all the achievements pretty easily, and also played the little holiday expansion bonus content to seal the deal. I had a fun time, and it was a good game. Playing as the monster in a horror game brings a turning of the tables conceptually that I think many people would enjoy. Unfortunately, I didn't enjoy it nearly so much on this brief replay I did on PS5. I didn't even play the holiday bonus level when I was done. I got my quick and sort of easy platinum and got out basically. I don't know exactly why it didn't click with me so much this time around, but it didn't, so it rests at the bottom of the honorable mentions. Astro's Playroom, however, was just as much of a hit the second time around as it was the first time. Obviously, Astro's Playroom is basically the PS5's tech demo, and I enjoyed it when I first played it in late 2021. With the bigger game Astrobot on the horizon late in 2024, a few small content updates were made for this title to build a little hype. I didn't replay it until after I had already finished Astrobot, spoilers for an entry on the list proper I suppose, but I had just as good a time re-experiencing this. My only real knock against it is that it's so damn short, which of course is to be expected and exactly why Astrobot exists now. If you recall, Remnant 2 may or may not have been my game of the year in 2023. I love the Remnant formula a ton, and I revisited that for a short time in 2024, primarily to collect as many of the items and the like as possible, and also to level as many things as possible. I would have done more of that, mind you, but I'd say a solid 20 plus hours in like one weekend ain't so bad for this purpose. I inadvertently ended up playing the third DLC while doing random rolls on Neyrud, though I have not played either of the first 2 DLC yet. I love Remnant 2, and I still need to play a lot more. If you recall, again, though I don't think a video exists for it, so you probably don't recall, Grime may or may not have been my game of the year in 2022. I played it entirely 2 times back in the state it was in back then, i.e. prior to any DLC or other free major content drops. I got all of the achievements, again at the time, and just overall had a great time. Now that the definitive edition exists, and while I'm waiting for Grime 2 to come out, I replayed Grime. But where my first 2 runs were on PC, this run, or rather these 2 runs, once on New Game, once more on New Game Plus for the secret boss exclusive to New Game Plus, this set of runs was on PS5. I got the platinum plus 100% of other trophies once more. I had a hell of a time, and I very nearly did 2 more runs, restarting completely on PC to replicate my build and play through New Game Plus again for the remaining trophies on that version of the game. Someday, trademark, I'll come back around to do that because I love this game, but that day is not anytime imminent. Alright, now that I've already spent way too much time rambling about games that aren't even on the list, let's finally start the list proper. The rest of the video will be split into parts 2 through 4, and each will contain 3 games. Without further ado... Number 9, Hot Wheels Unleashed 2 Turbocharged. And so we start with one of the most mid games I have ever played. Hot Wheels Unleashed 2 is an okay game, but it barely does anything to push the formula of the first game forward. I have fond memories of the first game, and so I hopped onto the second one immediately. Unfortunately, it didn't live up to the same fun factor for me, but maybe I just played it at the wrong time. I don't quite know for sure, but whether I could point to a particular reason or not doesn't change the fact that I was severely underwhelmed. Number 8, Helldivers 2. Conversely, I have to say right at the start here that I was not underwhelmed by Helldivers. The opposite, in fact. I had a great time. However, I am not a multiplayer gamer as a general rule. This means that Helldivers, being driven towards multiplayer action, because I'm most certainly not good enough to do a game like this solo even on the lowest difficulties, I know because I tried, Helldivers is not a game for me. But I did enjoy the small handful of sessions I had with it. Fun fact, my first and so far only live stream on the channel here was actually a test live stream while playing this very game. Unfortunately for me, upgrading my PC means that the work I did to prepare my software and audio and all that fancy jargon for streaming was undone, and thus I have to redo test streams again at some later point, but hey, it was cool while it lasted, and I wanted to stream more of it before that broke things. Number 7, Kingdom Hearts 2. I'm not the target audience for Kingdom Hearts, largely because I did not in any way grow up with it. I enjoyed Kingdom Hearts 1 for what it was, but it was by no means a favorite. I couldn't finish Chain of Memories because the gameplay was too much for my poor little pea-brain, and so I took forever to circle back around to Kingdom Hearts 2. At the time of this video, my Let's Play that I did of the game, joint with commentary from Josh, the friend who convinced me to buy this series in the first place, just concluded. Getting to the point, Kingdom Hearts 2 is more fun to play than the first game. That much is true. The gameplay is generally better. There are also a couple of really good bosses in this game where there's only like one boss from the first game I'd recall above fondly. The primary sin that Kingdom Hearts 2 commits is just being too long. Forcing you to revisit all of the worlds a second time after you've already been to them all once is silly and tedious. By the time you get to the end game, the game is really enjoyable. The problem is the revisits, which, while short, tack on too many hours to the game that it simply doesn't need, turning it very nearly into a slog. Number 6, Tales of Kinzera Zao. I might get a little flack for saying I enjoyed this game, but I really did. It's a bit simple, both narratively and in gameplay, but that doesn't make it bad. I enjoyed the concept, I enjoyed the storytelling, I enjoyed the thematic value and intent. I enjoyed the gameplay, I enjoyed the set pieces, I enjoyed the brevity and how it never got in its own way. Is Tales of Kinzera Zao a bit simple? Sure. But does it have heart? You bet it does. I'm glad this game exists, and I enjoyed playing it even if it doesn't cross the line into being something truly special. Number 5, Another Crab's Treasure. I'm kind of surprised this was my only Souls-like for the year, and it's a pretty good one at that. Another Crab's Treasure is on the simpler side of things when it comes to this sort of genre, and yet it is no less difficult, nor is it lacking in depth. The interesting elements to the combat, such as the way shells work as both temporary armor and as a parrying mechanism, and the way most of them have their own perks, makes the defensive side of combat quite diverse compared to most games. In comparison, the active attacks are simple: light attack, heavy attack, charged attack. Heavier variants if you happen to stick a shell to the end of your fork. Some enemies and elites can be frustrating, not all of the bosses are great, but it's a solid, good time. Don't be fooled by the art style and general PG-ish vibe though, this game is proper difficult at times. Number 4, Star Wars Jedi Survivor. Now for a game I really enjoyed, but feel is a bit bloated. I have played Jedi Fallen Order 3 times to this point, so I'm very familiar with the gameplay Respawn have constructed for their little Jedi trilogy here. At least I'm assuming there will be a third game, but I don't believe there's been any confirmation of the sort yet. I went into Jedi Survivor with high hopes, and it broadly satisfied. I enjoyed spending time in the universe, and especially with all of these characters again at the very least, but I can't lie, I think the game's a bit longer than it needs to be. The number of worlds and locations you visit in Survivor is overall pretty similar to Fallen Order, but the average size of said locations tends to be a good deal longer this go around, so it got to be a bit tedious completing at times. That said, there were some improvements and expansions to the gameplay that worked, and the storytelling, notably a particular twist, were great and surprising. Survivor is a worthy game, but I yet remain unsure whether I preferred it to its predecessor. And given my relative burnout on Fallen Order, I only played it that third time for gameplay footage, that's not as flattering a boat to be in as I feel it should be. The game's great though. Number 3, The Last of Us Part 2. Believe me, nobody is more surprised by this placement than I am. After doing a pretty mediocre job shitting all over this game back in 2020, I finally played the entire release for myself this year. For reference, I still watched 3 full playthroughs of the game back in 2020 before writing that old review, and I did not discuss gameplay at all, so don't come at me with the "oh, you didn't play it" thing, because I was very knowledgeable of the story, which is what I was critiquing at the time. Anyway, I didn't really expect to play this game for myself. Ever. And then I decided I wanted to revitalize a critical analysis, not just with brand new videos, but with a rewrite of all of the games I originally covered on the main channel, starting with The Last of Us 2. That meant I needed to actually play it, and so I bought the remastered version, which included the no return game mode, and did so. I will refrain from speaking too much about the game now, because a video on the game will eventually come out, way longer than I think I'm ready for, to be frank. But I can say for now that I actually enjoyed the game. My first run on New Game went surprisingly well. Some of my opinions on the story changed, some stayed the same, and I won't specify what did and didn't change for now, but I generally enjoyed it. Then I played New Game Plus and was a little less enthused, unfortunately, and then I played a lot of No Return, which got kind of old kind of fast. I like the gameplay of these games, unironically, but I didn't like it enough to play No Return on anything above moderate, for example. Hell, I even played on ultra light most of the time to make completing it quicker. Yeah, call me a pansy if you like. I play these games for fun, not for misery on account of clunkiness. Anyway, even though I still don't love this game, and it will never ever touch the levels of the first, I did enjoy myself the majority of the time, and the surprise I experienced in that first playthrough is worth a top 3 spot. In direct contrast to The Last of Us Part 2, number 2, Astrobot. How about a thoroughly less controversial game that basically everybody agrees is great? Yeah, I know you knew it was coming somewhere because of the Astro's Playroom section earlier, but that's alright. Astrobot is solid fun. It's Astro's Playroom, but longer, and also unfortunately missing a tiny bit of the control-based nuance that I was wanting from it, but that's a very minor complaint. If you like 3D platformers, this game will satisfy, especially since it's notably easier than most of the genre tends to be, making it friendly even for kids. Where people doubted Astro would ever be a platforming mascot after Playroom, this game solidified its place in the general gaming consciousness. I really enjoyed the game, and I loved the ideas of it, and I loved how it went from idea to idea without ever overstaying its welcome, except maybe a couple of those cross, circle, triangle, and square levels you have to do in one quick go. Some of those were really frustrating. The game is simply a joy to play 98% of the time, and I enjoyed mindlessly collecting bots and trinkets while listening to random podcasts shortly after it released. Number 1, Signalis. And my actual game of the year is Signalis? Yeah, Signalis. I'm surprised by this pick. A lot, actually. Part of me questions it even still, but something about it feels right. Or at least it feels wrong to place this below anything else. The writing and lore and illusions of the game are intriguing beyond question. The world design and levels and enemies are both very intuitive and maze-like, balancing on a tightrope that many other developers fail to. The gameplay and encounter design and puzzles are all open enough to take your time and attention without being so obtuse as to be mashing buttons until something works or forcing the player to find a guide for help. Something about what Signalis does and the way it does it is genius. Everything is simply right in the sweet spot for what it needs to be in order to be good. I commend the effort gone into this work, and I thank my brother for introducing it to me. In a way, it's also the perfect survival horror game for me, i.e. not so scary as to be debilitating, nor so easygoing as to be a steamroll. For my gameplay style, which errs on the side of ultra-conservatism and saving as many resources as humanly possible, which I guess means I'm a very passive player, this game works beautifully. I was even able to beat the game itself on the harder difficulty with little enough error and resource usage to make myself genuinely proud and my brother dumbfounded. Apparently he's bad at the game or something, I don't know. Or, well, there's a caveat. I didn't do the final boss on the harder difficulty, which, yes, somewhat invalidates my boast. Instead, I did the secret ending with a guide, I confess, on this harder run, specifically so I could avoid doing the final boss that way. I was bad enough at said boss on the regular difficulty, I chose this circumvention deliberately. Anyway, I'm getting off track. Signalis is fantastic. Beyond all of the praises I've already heaped upon it, the tone and the atmosphere of it is brilliant and brilliantly suit the interesting and strange structure and the mysteries the story leaves open to interpretation. I also love how the player's actions, meaning quite literally how good they play, are what influence which of the 3 regular endings you get. I should hop back on and play differently to try to get the 2 endings I haven't seen yet. I know there's Leave, Memory, Promise, and the secret ending called Artifact. I got Artifact, obviously, and I also got Memory. I need to try to get Leave and Promise. I seriously recommend Signalis, by the way, in case my gushing about it wasn't enough. It's a fabulous game, and the more I think about it in hindsight, the more I absolutely love it. So there you have my 2024 Game of the Year list. It may not have been what 2023 was, but it was still good, and I'm very happy with it. But even though I am happy with how my gaming went, I can't deny there are several games I was hoping to play, or even really intended to play over the year that I simply couldn't make time for, or in the interest of honesty failed to prioritize sometimes. While not an exhaustive list, games such as the Resident Evil 4 remake, the Silent Hill 2 remake, and the Dead Space remake have been high on that list since release in each case. I really did intend to play the Crowsworn backer demo for a Let's Play at some point, and would have been rectifying that this January if not for major timeline struggles as a result of work. I wanted to circle back around to Final Fantasy again, both 16 for doing New Game Plus for the Platinum, plus the DLCs on top of it, and to actually finally play 4 after a while since finishing 3, and last but certainly not least, I really want to play Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. I didn't expect to want to play it at all, but the clips and reviews I've seen have more than sold me on it anyway, so I want to rectify that immediately after all of my work for this month is over. Theoretically, by the time this video airs, I will be a significant chunk of the way through that game, relaxing a bit ahead of the turn of the month into February, aka when the video grind comes back to haunt for a few days. Unfortunately, at the time of recording, I'm not so sure that'll happen anymore. Indiana Jones might be a February project for me. If you enjoyed this video, and you enjoy watching people play games, I hope to start streaming on Fridays on this channel sometime soon-ish. Sometimes those streams will be with Lane, a friend of mine whose channel is linked at the very bottom of the description, but sometimes those streams will be solo, so I can finally justify playing some of these games that I've been holding off on, such as Final Fantasy stuff, and also so that I can do Let's Plays, quote-unquote, of games like RE4 Remake, which I promised to a couple of friends nearly 2 years ago now. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. If you missed either my 2024 Film of the Year or Album of the Year rankings over the last couple weeks, you can check those out via the end card screen right now. I hope to see you there.